Hi everyone! In this lesson, we're going to read a story called My Career in a Language School. No, this is not my personal story. It's just a story to help you with vocabulary, collocations, and grammar in English, specifically about work and careers and professions. We're going to look at and analyze everything. I'm going to read each section individually. Then, after each section, we'll break it down and I'll explain a lot of different things so you can understand. I left the full text of this story in the description so you can follow along with me. Remember, collocations are important word combinations in English that sound natural. For example, in English, we wouldn't say an all the time job. We would say a full-time job. That's an example of a collocation. So these word combinations are very important to know. Now, let's start. After I graduated in linguistics, I knew I wanted to work in education, but I wasn't sure where to start. Like many new graduates, I had no savings and had to take on whatever job I could just to get by. In English, you graduate in a subject. For example, graduate in history, graduate in psychology, graduate in computer science. We work in a field. A field of work is a group of related industries. For example, healthcare or tech. You can say, I work in hospitality, like hotels, or I work in tourism. Here is a big list of different fields of work. You can take notes and write some example sentences in the comments. To graduate is a verb. For example, I graduated last year. I'm graduating tomorrow. I'm going to graduate next year. But a graduate is a noun. This is a person who graduated. Notice the difference in pronunciation. To graduate or a graduate. The ending for the verb or the action is ate. I graduated in linguistics. I graduated in linguistics. The ending for the noun or the person is it. A graduate. Like many new graduates. Look at these words. How do you pronounce them? The first word is chocolate and climate. These are nouns or concepts or things, so that ATE is pronounced it. Now, let's try again. How do you pronounce these words? An associate and to associate. An estimate and to estimate. How much do you estimate that the estimate will be? One more time. How much do you estimate that the estimate will be? Remember, the verb pronunciation is ate, estimate, and the noun is it, an estimate. One way that we can say we have zero of something is to use the word no. I had no savings. I had zero savings. When we use the phrasal verb take on, we're expressing that we accept a challenge or a responsibility. The word job is very similar to the word responsibility in English. In that case, we can say take on a job, take on a new responsibility, get a new responsibility, new work so we can get money, of course. I wanted to take on whatever job I could just to get by. When we use the phrasal verb get by, we're talking about surviving. In this case, surviving financially. I accept whatever job I can just to survive. I take on whatever job I can just to get by. Let's continue with the story. I put my resume together and applied to several places, hoping for a stable job. Eventually, I was thrilled to join a language school as a first-year instructor. The salary wasn't great at first, but it was enough to make a living, and I genuinely enjoyed many aspects of the job. When we use the phrasal verb put together or put something together, this means assemble or construct from different parts. Now let's look at the verb apply. When we use this verb, the preposition can change. I can apply to a place. In the same way, I can go to a place. But we apply for a job. Apply to a place, but apply for a job, or apply for a position. A position in this case would be a position in the company or a job. Again, apply to a place, a location, or apply for a job, or apply for a position in the company. For example, I applied to the restaurant down the street. I applied to McDonald's. Or I applied to Starbucks for a job. A nice collocation in English is a stable job. That's something that most of us want, something that most of us desire. My advice to you is, if you want a stable job, stay away from YouTube. I was thrilled to join a language school. If you're thrilled to do something, you're very excited to do it. Another collocation in English is join a company. In this case, join a language school as a teacher. The salary wasn't great at first. Let's stop for a moment and talk about the word salary. In the United States, we normally think of a salary as per year. But if you want to talk about getting paid per hour, you should use the word wage, like the minimum wage. The minimum wage is the lowest amount of money you can get paid per hour. This is a very important distinction. It was enough to make a living. Another important collocation. If we make a living, we're creating a way to live. For example, I make a living on YouTube. I make a living by teaching English to my amazing students. I enjoyed many aspects of the job is a common way to talk about the details of the job. The word aspects is similar to the word details in this case. Now, let's continue. The members of the staff were welcoming, and I quickly felt at home. Over time, I gained valuable work experience and started building up a network of contacts, both colleagues and students who would later help me in my career. A staff is like a team, a group of employees. Members of a staff or staff members are employees or members of the work team. Work experience is another important collocation that we should use frequently. This one is especially important for job interviews. I started building up a network. Build up is another way to just say build. We often build in that direction, just like a house or skyscraper. We build up. We increase. Both colleagues and students who would later help me in my career. Here we have an interesting construction. We have two verbs. The first one, would, and the second one, help. We can put adverbs in between two verbs like this. The word later in this case is an adverb of time. Colleagues and students who would later help me. Colleagues and students who would probably help me. Colleagues and students who would also help me. One more example, colleagues and students who would definitely help me. Word order is an important thing to focus on to sound natural in English. This is often a big mistake for a lot of students. And we can understand you most of the time if you don't use the correct order, but if you really want to sound natural, this is something very important to practice. Remember, in between two verbs like can, or would, or could, or should, and another verb, help, or eat, or something else, take, we put the adverb in between. Let's continue. After a couple of years, I was offered a full-time teaching position, and I began to climb the company ladder. I took on more responsibilities, helping design new and creative lesson plans and even training new teachers. A full-time job is typically salaried and 40 hours a week. Remember, salary is per year, so that makes sense. This would be with a full-time teaching position. The other classification of a job is part-time, and this is typically with wages. Remember, wages are per hour. Climb the company ladder. First, the pronunciation for climb is without the letter B. Climb, climb. You're finishing with M. Climb the company ladder. Normally, we can go up a ladder or go down a ladder. In a normal case, we can also use the verb climb. But here, climbing the company ladder is like getting a promotion, to advance in a company. This expression is very common. And again, like before, the verb take on is about responsibilities in a company. And the word job is very similar to the word responsibilities. The words job and responsibility are countable nouns. Remember that work is uncountable. When we have a big responsibility, like a renovation, for example, we can say, I'm renovating my kitchen right now. It's a big job. It's a big responsibility, but at the same time, it's a lot of work. When we take on these jobs or responsibilities, often within a company, they're official. Let's keep going. Everything was going well until the school faced financial difficulties. Unfortunately, they had to lay off several instructors, and I narrowly avoided being one of them. Some colleagues were even fired due to restructuring. It was a stressful time, but I decided to take control of my future. In American English, we use two terms to mean that someone doesn't have a job anymore. For example, someone can be laid off by the company. I was laid off from my job last year. If you're laid off, this is not the employee's fault. This is the company's decision because of financial problems or something similar. If someone is fired, it's the fault of the employee. They messed up or made a big mistake in the company that cost them their job. One more is to quit a job or resign from a job. This is when the employee takes action. Quit is more common and casual than resign. I narrowly avoided being one of them. After the word avoid, we must use a gerund in English. I avoided being one of the teachers who was laid off. I avoided being. And a nice collocation that you can use in English is take control of something. Take is a verb which is related to force. This is different than get control of something. Get is a little more casual. Get often means obtain, but take is with force. Take control of my future. Take control of my life. Let's keep going. I handed in my resignation and thought about the next steps I would take. I realized more flexibility in my career was something I valued. Hand in a resignation is the same as resign from a job. Hand in, which we saw in the lesson about the verb turn in, is a verb which means submit or officially give. We can hand in our resignation to our employer. This means we quit our job. We take steps to do something. For example, you're taking steps to improve your English right now. Maybe you're listening or taking notes. These are individual steps to learn a language. Let's continue. Instead of returning to my full-time role, I chose to go part-time and started doing freelance tutoring on the side. I gradually built up a strong base of private students, which allowed me to earn a good living without being tied to one institution. If you go part-time, that means you take on a part-time job. This is often very common in English. We say we go part-time or go full-time. The word go here represents a change. Freelance work is work that is not part of a company. The worker jumps from client to client and from project to project. Freelance work is similar to what I do now. I give private classes almost every day using italki. And if you want to meet me personally, the link is in the description. Don't forget the link to save some money if you schedule your first lesson with me. Earn is a verb which implies hard work. You have to earn your money. We can't just give the money to you. You have to work hard for it. To earn a good living is similar to make a good living, but the verb earn tells us that it's with hard work. And if you're tied to a place, like an institution, you're connected to that place and you're trapped. You can't leave because you're tied to it. Maybe you can leave, you can quit, but you have that responsibility. You're tied to one institution, the opposite of freelance work. Freelancers are not tied to an institution. Let's continue. One day, I received a tempting offer from a prestigious international academy that needed an experienced head teacher. The position came with better pay and opportunities for career growth. Though I had been comfortable, I felt it was time for a change. I made the difficult decision to quit my part-time job and move abroad. A tempting offer is an offer that is hard to refuse. It's hard to say no to the offer. There is temptation for a tempting offer. Maybe the salary is high and very tempting, or maybe the location is very tempting. Though I had been comfortable, I felt it was time for a change. This is an interesting construction in English. We can start a sentence with the word though, but let's rearrange this sentence. Let's put the second part first. I felt it was time for a change, though I had been comfortable. The word though in this context is the same as although, which shows a contrast. If you want to make it easier, it's very similar to the word but. We normally don't put the word but at the beginning of a sentence in English. But an easier version of this sentence would be, I felt it was time for a change, but I had been comfortable. Again, this construction shows contrast. We can use though or although, but is a little more casual. Although is a little more formal, but though is a very common word in spoken English. To quit is to say, I'm finished with this company. Remember, the word quit is used in casual, everyday English. It's a very common verb when talking about leaving a job. Let's continue. However, after a few years in a lead position, I realized I had a change of heart. While I was on the fast track to an executive role, I found myself missing direct interaction with students. We use the expression have a change of heart when we feel a different way about something. I had a change of heart when I entered the corporate role. I realized I preferred a role closer to the students. To be on the fast track means to be moving quickly. A track is like a path, but specifically for something like jogging or racing. Let's continue. The administrative tasks were taking too much of my time, and I felt drained. I knew I needed to get my priorities straight. Personal fulfillment had to take priority over just career advancement. When you feel drained, you feel like all of the energy is leaving you, just like the drains in the sinks in our bathrooms or kitchens. The expression get my priorities straight or get my priorities in order just means to prioritize the most important things, to put them in the first position on the list, the most important. If something takes priority over something else, it's more important than that thing. Let's continue. Now I'm once again working as a private tutor, enjoying the freedom that freelance work provides. I still keep my options open and remain open to offers, but I'm happy to have found a balance between work and a life that truly suits me. We put the adverb of time, once again, after the verb to be. I'm or I am, once again, working as a private tutor. Normally, adverbs go before the main verb in a sentence. For example, I always get up at 8 a.m. I never eat a big dinner. But for word order, putting adverbs after to be is very important to sound natural. I'm or I am once again working. Another example, I am usually tired after work. You are never on time for your lesson. To keep your options open means to be flexible with those options. You can choose option A or option B. You still haven't decided. And remain open to offers is similar, meaning you're flexible. The offers can keep coming until you find one that you like. I really hope you liked this lesson. If you did, please leave a comment, write a theme that you would like to see in future lessons. I'm very happy to help. One more time, thank you so much for your support. I hope you learned something new, and thank you, channel members. See you in the next lesson.